Hello, my name is Hawk, and I'm an outdoor chef. And you can imagine by looking at me that I don't look like an ordinary chef, although I've probably been cooking for about 60 years. My grandmother got me started in this when I was just a little bitty person, teaching me how to cook outdoors. She was a little Native American lady, and I was the youngest in the family, so when all the older boys and everything went off to go hunting or whatever, I was at home with Grandma, so I was Grandma and Grandpa's cooking buddy. My grandfather was a blacksmith, and he run a blacksmith shop. And anyway, the reason that I'm doing this is because so many of my friends and associates and just people that know me are always inquiring about how I do these things and how I can cook such large amounts of food and feed so many people. Well, the truth of the matter is I've been doing this a really long time, and as you can see behind me, I've got one of my smokers behind me, and I have several others, but this one I built myself. I built all of my smokers myself, and but today I'm not cooking off of wood because I've just got a limited amount of time. I'm going to do some stuff off of propane today because to be honest, that's the type of thing that you'd have more access to than you would to be able to build a fire and cook off coals. Although later on, maybe in the next time I do this, we'll be cooking off of wood. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And over here in the smoker, I've got some stuff that I've been holding in the smoker. Just to get it started. Now what I have here is what I'm making here today is pork chili. Now we're all used to beef chili, but in most situations around, pork chili is more the norm, especially further down south, like Latin America. So in any case, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And what I have here is I have a 12-quart Camp Dutch oven. A Camp Dutch oven will have legs on the bottom and a lid that you can put coals in. And I'm going to get started with this. And what I have here is I've trimmed the large percentage of the fat off of this pork shoulder, and I'm going to start cooking with it. I'll get my skillet started with this, and you can hear it sizzling just a little bit here. And now what I'll do is I'll cook this and render it down, and at the same time I'll develop a lot of fond, the brown bits in the bottom of my pot to start the flavoring of my chili. And at the same time, here I've got a spice mix. I'm not going to go into detail today about my spice mix. Normally, with pork chili, I would use fresh green chilies, but today I'm making an exception. I have a small group meeting tonight, and I'm going to cook chili. This chili that I'm cooking here today, I'm going to take that for that small group to the church. Now, as you can see, I don't measure much. Because I've done this for so long, I can just kind of go by sight. But I'm going to say that's about 2 pounds of fat that I dropped in there, and I put about 2 tablespoons of this seasoning mix. Now later on, if I get a chance, I'll go through the recipe on this and start teaching y'all and demonstrating how to make that chili seasoning pack. You can also use it as a rub. Now just as soon as I get this really, I'm going to brown this really all the way through. And now one of the things that you hear over and over and over again is don't crowd your skillet. Well, I'm here to debunk that. my whole life, my whole way of doing, especially chili, is by crowding the skillet. The first thing I want to do is I want to draw all the moisture out. I want my meat to start to stew in its own juices. So by doing that, by stewing it in its own juices, it already begins the cooking processes, and at some point in time, I get all of the moisture cooked out of it and it begins to brown. Well, at that point in time, it's ready to begin to add water to it and then start stewing it even further. But I have developed my fond, the meat. Now what I'll do with this fat is, after this fat's completely browned and completely rendered out, what I'll do is I'll take it out of the pot, but I'll save it. And later, towards the end of the cooking process, I'll chop this rendered fat up in really, really tiny pieces that will almost like cornmeal. And then I'll add it back to the pot, and that's one of the things that I'll use to help thicken to my pot.
Okay, so we're done with pot.
Yeah, you can see how it's beginning to render down, and we don't want to not use the fat. We just want to render it down a little bit. The fat in the meat will cook differently. As you can see, it's cooked down considerably. It's very, very well browned, and it's developed a tremendous amount of fond. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull all of that out, and I'm going to save it for later. At a later date, I'm going to chop this up. Regular meat is starting to be almost done. As I said earlier, I'll chop this extremely fine and add it back to the chili. Okay, now I'm going to drain most of that oil off. I'm going to do it a little bit different probably than you're used to, because I'm just going to, since my smoker's equipped for that much oil, I'm just going to put it right down in the smoker. And that's a quick and easy way to get rid of most of your unnecessary fat. Now I want to keep some, because most of the flavor in this is going to be in the fat. Now what I'm going to do here is this meat in this smoker for a couple of reasons. I'm getting a little bit of smoke on it, but it mainly is to keep the flies from bothering me. Now what I have here is I have an 8-pound pork shoulder that I have deboned and trimmed the fat off of. Now, as you can see here, I still have the bone here. I'm going to add this meat and, as I said earlier, I want to crowd the skillet. Now what's happening is this meat is already beginning to stew. And as you can see, that the bone that come out of this has got a considerable amount of smoke already on it. And there'll be a whole lot of flavor coming out of that bone. So I'm not just going to discard the bone. I'm going to cook it with the chili, and then I'll discard the bone. As soon as this begins to brown off, I'll add my onions to it. Now, I'm not going to put any beans in this. I believe in cooking beans and chili separate. So usually what I do is when I cook a big pot of chili, which is normally a whole lot bigger than this, most of the pots that I cook in hold anywhere from 15 to 30 gallons. So with that said, as soon as I get this browned off real well, which won't take very long at all, I'll add my onions and brown them off. We have just about, you can probably tell by the sound, that it's just now starting to brown. I've cooked it all that moisture off, and in here just a few minutes we're going to have this completely browned off. All right, now I have my spice mix here in my hand again, and now that this meat's starting to brown, I'm going to go ahead and bloom my spices in this oil and with this meat. Now that's probably at least 1/4 cup there. So it's pretty heavy on spices. You stir that in and see what it looks like. As you can see, it's starting to fry. Now, all of those people that tell you that put it in your meat in small batches and cook it in small batches, as you can see here, I'm not having any trouble at all browning my meat. And I put all of that 8 pounds of pork in there all at one time, even with the bone in it. It's browning off now nicely now. I'm just going to let that kind of sit for just a little bit. And I think I'm going to add just a little bit more spice here. That looks really good right now. Okay, now it's reached the point to where I'm going to add my onions. It's browned just exactly the way I want it. As you can hear, it's sizzling right along. So now I'm going to add my onions, and I'm going to use those onions and the moisture in those onions to deglaze my pan. You can see all that fawn on the bottom of that skillet. That's what, you see how it's starting to come up? That's where all that flavor in that chili is going to come from. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more chili powder to it. Like I said, I make this myself. I have my own blend. And maybe next time we'll talk about how to mix it and what you're going to need. We'll go ahead and add some water to it. I'm going to do it out of the hose, but it'll be okay, but some people may not like that. Now, as you can see here, it is starting to look like chili. I'm going to get that bone submerged real good, and I'm going to put a lid on it, and I'm just going to let it cook for a while.
Smelling great.
Okay, here I have that fat that I browned off earlier. I'm going to go ahead and chop that up extremely fine. Okay, what I have here, I've got it chopped up to about pea size. And I think I'm going to let it go at that. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that right in. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it sure looks good. I've got most of the water cooked off of it, and which is exactly the way I like to do it. And the meat is tender enough that this bone that I put in there, I can just scrape the meat right off the bone now. And as I'm doing right now. I'm gonna pick that up to where I can get a hold of it a little bit and just go ahead and scrape any meat that is left on that bone off. Well, I'm gonna set it over here in one of these, in this bowl, and let it cool for just a few minutes, and then I'll scrape that off. Okay, now what I have here is it's a cornmeal slurry. It's about a cup of cornmeal and about a cup of cold water. And I'm just going to start adding that to it a little bit at a time. And that'll thicken it pretty fast. It's about twice as thick as it was before, but I like it to be just a little bit thicker than that, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And it also causes the stock, the broth, to stick to the meat really, really well. And there we have it. We have cowboy pork chili.